How's everybody doing? Welcome back to the Behind the Food podcast. I've got my co-host Daniel with me, and our guest today is Rhett Barney. He is one of the co-founders of Sturdy Sauce. I met you, Rhett. I believe at the KeHE trade show,
Uh,
or was it
Man,
you and a fry?
yeah, I think it was KeHE. I think that's right.
Okay, it was probably the KeHE
At
trade
the
show.
summer show. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was obsessed with your guys' sauce. Before we get into that, though, Daniel and I were texting back and forth yesterday, and he was like, "Dude, we're so cooked."
Yeah.
Usually when he says that to me, I'm like, "Oh, let's talk about it on the podcast. This is a great topic."
Yeah.
So Daniel, I'll let you take it away, but we were having a really fun text conversation last night.
Yeah. So I was doing a deep dive with our good friend ChatGPT about the high level randomized control trial data surrounding seed oils and animal fats over the past, 30, 40, 50 years. And what blew my mind was the data hasn't changed. The data still show that animal fats increase LDL cholesterol and increase cardiac events, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't eat animal fats. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that the highest level randomized control trials still show that seed oils lower cardiac events and that polyunsaturated fats in general are good for you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, are you saying though that like the people that eat like sticks of butter on Instagram, like just raw sticks of butter, they may be a little misinformed?
They
Like
just
the
might
people who
be.
are hardcore vegan.
Yeah, like extremism tends to not breed the best health outcomes, believe it or not. And believe it or not, mixed diets seem to produce the best outcomes when it comes to health. So all I'm trying to say is that cancel out the noise on social media, do your own research, and what you'll often find is that trends come and go. The data stays the same.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to actually bring that up at the beginning of this episode is I think that specific part like really relates to what you guys are working on, Rhett. Um, the trends do come and go. And I've like watched them come and go for like the last 10 years. And it's kind of funny how it'll be like people are really into like this, and then they're into that, and then they're into this. But the one thing that's kind of stayed the same for a very long time is that like the things that actually are good for your health are just kind of good for your health. And what you guys are working on at Sturdy Sauce was so cool to me because I was like, you guys have put protein into a format that's not weird, one. And two, um, it's not like you're giving up any kind of like culinary like experience for it. I've had your guys' sauce and it's amazing. But I guess our first question usually for guests is how did you guys get started? You're a lawyer by trade. Hey, why take the time to start a
Hmm.
pasta sauce company?
Yeah, I actually get that question frequently. There's a lot of different factors that play into that. And I'll spare you the whole story, but my co-founder and I, it's Chad, we have been friends for a really long time, 20 plus years. We actually met on a bus in Brazil, doing some humanitarian missionary type work. And over the years, just stayed in touch and did different things. Chad took the typical sort of entrepreneur route, started a couple different companies, and I went the law school lawyer route. And we always talked about, well, what are we going to do together? What's the thing that we're going to do? Because even though I took the lawyer route, the area of law that I practice is very commercial, very business oriented. It's in the field of intellectual property and general sort of commercial corporate work. So I'm having business conversations with my clients. I'm frequently overstepping the bounds of what a lawyer would traditionally do. And my clients are like, well, what would you do? Right? How often did I get that question, especially earlier on in my career when I was working with smaller kind of startups? And many times they just took my advice, or I worked with them through things that they asked me to help with, and it ended up being very successful. Some of my early clients exited for hundreds of millions. One of them exited for over $1 billion. And so it's like, hey, I like that. This is a lot of fun to see sort of start to finish and to be a part of that and to see what acquiring organizations, whether they're strategic or private equity or whatever, what they consider to be valuable. In the meantime, Chad was kind of doing his own thing, and I was working with him and helping with him and sort of his ventures. Chad is very successful and very talented guy. And so we started a company right before COVID that was, we actually started a series of companies that it moved in quick succession, but they were still in sort of the health and wellness space, supplements in this kind of the supplements area, and the better for you space. And one of the things that we really kind of went all in on was like a better for you candy. So this sort of, at the time, there was only one better for you candy, and it was the Smart Sweets lady. And we thought, gosh, this is brilliant, right? Like, this is such a great idea. We didn't love the taste of what she was doing, and we thought that, okay, we could do something kind of similar. And again, this was 6 or 7 years ago. So the opportunity to work with certain types of ingredients was pretty limited. We built this fantastic back-end machine. We raised a little bit of money, and we were ready to rock and roll. And the week that we were doing our first big production run, COVID happened. And everything shut down. And so we said, okay, well, we'll just hold tight for a month, 2 months, 3 months in, we haven't fully launched. And we found out at about that point that our key primary ingredient, there was only 2 or 3 suppliers in the world. 2 of them went out of business during that first stretch. And so that has more or less killed the business. But we had built a big machine, and we had used investor funds to build like a really great back end, a great system. And so, the investor said, hey, you got to either use the money or you got to give me my money back. And we said, all right, well, let's go. So then we jumped into like a gummy supplement sort of space, which everyone else and their dog jumped in on that at the same time, right? I mean, that was just explosive gummy growth. And, we sold some pallets here and there, but very little success. It was so saturated. That was kind of a crummy experience. And, we chased that for, I don't know, a year or two.
Gummy experience.
Yeah, the gummy experience. And we said, okay, let's wind this down. Let's wrap this up. And as part of that wind down process, Chad and I were talking, and I said, look, as soon as we're done with this, I have another idea. I want to talk to you about something, but I'm not going to tell you what it is until we're done wrapping this other one up. And he said, no, tell me. I want to know. And I said, if I tell you, you're not going to help me wind down this company because you're going to go all in on this other thing. And he said, no, just tell me. And so I told him, and he did not help me for one day after that. He said, I'm all in on this other thing. And so, but that other thing was Sturdy Sauce. And Chad and I are both health and fitness guys. Chad at the time was very much into powerlifting. I was more of an endurance triathlete, kind of long distance things. But we were both obsessed with macronutrients. And when we talk about Sturdy Sauce, we talk about protein. But for you guys, and I think for the relevant audience, it's not just about protein. It's about getting that right macronutrient profile in everything that you eat and being very intentional about it. And so we started iterating on a couple of different products that we could incorporate, things that we had been doing in our lives. So in my life personally, I was very into macronutrients, but I also, I have kids that don't like protein. They don't like the taste of meat, or they don't like the texture of meat. And it's hard to get them to eat protein in a way that that's like a high quality, like that's the amount that I think that they need. And I think there's a lot of disagreement, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on in the show, about how much people need. But I really felt like, gosh, my kids, particularly my kids that are athletes, need to get into kind of have better macronutrients in their meals. And so I was sneaking different types of protein into their food. And I realized that I was onto something really special, really cool, when I was able to get 20 grams of protein into a bowl of cereal for my kids, and they had no idea. It was completely oblivious to
How'd you do that?
the milk, right?
It was a it was a combination of milk and collagen peptide and a whey, but like a really fine whey. And I combined them in different proportions. I heated it up and then I let it cool down. And you add a little bit of honey to it, and it takes away some of that bitterness that comes. And then you add just like whatever the cereal is. And anyway, that was very like Frankenstein-y, right? Like there wasn't a whole lot of science behind it other than, hey, how far can I push this to get to where my kids are doing it? And I was kind of sharing some of that with Chad, and he was like, "Yeah, it's crazy. I'm doing something similar with with his son, with his kid." And we said, okay, let's look at these different areas where consumers have demonstrated that that they're interested in increasing protein, or they're having something better for you. And you will also recall at around the same time that Bonza was exploding, right? People were saying, "Hey, we want high protein noodles," and I was eating all the high different protein, all the different high protein noodles, and I was okay. I didn't eat a lot of pasta because it was kind of a goofy macronutrient. But my kids liked pastas, and that's something that kids can pretty consistently eat, and they're generally okay with spaghettis and whatnot. And we were buying all these different types of noodles, but my kids didn't like them. They wouldn't eat them. They were saying, "Oh, the texture's off, the taste is off." And so while I was willing to sacrifice taste for nutrition, my kids are like, "Nah, hard pass. I'm not doing that." And so anyway, so Chad and I were having these conversations, looking at what was out there, and we said, "Hey, let's see what kinds of high protein sauces there are, because there's only so much protein you can put in a noodle without changing that experience that the consumers are used to." And the more we dug, we're like, nothing. No one's done anything with this, which seemed crazy to me because you can put in so much more protein into a sauce than you can in a noodle. And it's a much, our product is really hard to make, but we're not baking anything, right? And so like when you bake something and you try to condense it into a really fine sort of material, just the limits of what you can do with that are pretty extreme. So anyway, that's how we settled on Sturdy Sauce. That's the short version, right? There's a much longer version to it.
It's honestly a fascinating origin story, but I think it like goes back to this thing that Daniel and I talked to a lot of founders about, which is that it came from a very organic place. Like you had a problem like in your own life, you're looking to solve. You solve it kind of in like like you said, the Frankenstein-y, like chef in like my home kitchen way. That usually is where like the best ideas come from, because I find that when people do that, they generally find a way to make things taste good enough to pass like the family test.
Yeah.
For me, it's
Well,
like the kid test, right? Like if my 5-year-old will eat it, and now with what we do with like Sprout CPG, whenever I have people who we might like invest in their company, I immediately am like, I'm gonna feed your product to my kid, and if they hate it, I probably am not gonna write you a check. The reason being, like, if it can pass, like my kids have a very wide palate, by the way, everybody. They're not like mac and cheese kids. But they do know under recognize when something tastes bad. And Sue
they
often,
recognize it and they let you know.
yeah, they
let
let
you
you know.
know.
They're very honest. I've
Yep.
seen recently, one of my friends told me this. He was like, I saw a bunch of people, I can't remember what the brand is. It's probably best I don't share it anyways, because I don't like to badmouth like other people also. But like one of my friends told me recently, he's like, every single person I follow on LinkedIn said that this brand tastes good. I went and bought their product and it tastes like cardboard. And I was like, people don't want to get out there and say the baby's ugly for anybody. But your kids will definitely let you, right? So once you guys settled on Sturdy Sauce, um, you mentioned something earlier about like protein intake and stuff like that. How did you guys decide, or like, how did you go about deciding like how much protein to put in? Because I
Okay,
feel
so
like if it's a
yeah.
protein product, it's kind of like put as much in as you can before it like jacks up the taste.
Um, so that was kind of the next phase, right? So I kind of told you like, okay, we settled on sauce, and then we said, well, what can we do? Like how much what are the possibilities here? And so we spent actually a year doing R&D, Chad and I, in our own kitchens. We tried out 30, 40, 50 different types of protein or combinations of proteins. to see what was possible. And we had a couple of non-negotiables where we said, if we can't do it this way, then we'll find something else to work on. It had to be all natural. It had to have a meaningful amount of protein, which we sort of decided, hey, maybe 20 grams, like 20 to 25 grams of protein was what we considered to be a meaningful amount of protein.
Per serving.
Yeah, per serving, exactly. So it had to be all natural, it had to be a meaningful amount of protein. It had to be shelf stable, so it's not something that had to sit in your fridge all the time. And it had to be something that our kids would eat. Like the taste, the experience, right? The smell, the texture, that whole sort of culinary mouthfeel type thing. It had to be something that our kids were okay with. And it took us a year to figure out what that meant. And, gosh, I mean, it just feels like so long ago, but at the time, that's when all of the plant protein was like at its peak, right? People are like, if it's not plant protein, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So we thought, hey, we got to figure out a way to get some plant protein in here. And we tried everything you can think of. And I hate pea protein, by the way.
Little did you know people would hate it in like 3 years.
Oh my word. I've always hated pea protein. Like I remember the first time I ate pea protein, it was like 2012. No, it was 2010. I was still like in law school, and my wife had bought me a tub of it, and she's like, "This is amazing." And I like opened it. Have you guys ever bought a tub of it? I opened it, I took the lid off, and it was staticky, and it was a chain of static. And I like lifted the lid. I was like, "What is going? How is this happening?" And
what kind of science project did you just buy me?
It was crazy, right? And then I remember having that first drink, and like I just like, right, that reaction of like,
visceral reaction.
It was so bad, and ever since then I'm just like, it's trauma for me to eat it. But I was like, we gotta figure out a way to get in the pea protein. Okay, pea protein's out.
Right.
Brown rice protein, even if it's not brown. Okay, well, what about quinoa? Well, what about some edamame? I mean, we tried, you guys, telling you everything. And then finally, we said, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Kind of went back to like the basics, and we said, okay, it's got to be protein, but we wanted it to be as complete of a protein source as we could make it. And so we said, okay, well, collagen in and of itself is not a complete protein, so it can't just be that. That worked. It worked. Okay, it was okay, but that has a limited sort of functionality. And I'm actually not a hater of collagen. I think collagen's fantastic, but it's limited. So then we said, okay, well, if we can get a sort of a higher density bone broth, we're going to add that in, but we're going to need some whey protein in there as well. And that was sort of what we settled on, was that combination. And then we started saying, okay, what are the different amounts we can do to still hit our 20 to 25? And we figured it out. We figured out what that sort of ratio needs to be. And Chad really was an important mad scientist on that. He's like a dog on a bone with that stuff, and he just kept going and going and going and going. We tried it out with our kids. The kids loved it. And we said, okay, this is it. This is what we're going to commercialize. We took it to more or less a commercial kitchen, and we gave it to this guy, and he said, hey, this tastes delicious, but it's not shelf stable, like not even close to being shelf stable. You are so far outside the realm of food safety. No one should be consuming this product unless you're making it and serving it fresh. And we said, well, that's not going to work. So we had to change the formula again to make it shelf stable, but also be all natural. Because he said, hey, I've got some stuff that I can just put in here, and it's like a benzene or something like that. I don't know what it was, right? And we said, well, if we can't pronounce it, we're not putting it in there. That's one of our non-negotiables. Right. So the first thing was to just add citric acid, right? And this guy added citric acid. He told us everything was going to be just fine. We did our first big production run, and at the time, our jars were 24 ounces, I think, either 24 or 27 ounces. And we did our first production run. We sent everything to our 3PL. We kind of built the front end out. And then we tried it ourselves. After all of that, we finally tasted it. That's a horrible mistake. First off, we should have tried it right then, and we didn't. I can't remember why we were not available to taste it right away, but it was disgusting. It was horrific. And we had the, anyway, we pulled the crates back from the 3PL and we just scrapped it all. And we said, all right, we got to start over. Then we started saying, okay, well, what are other shelf stabilizers? What if we change the balance of the proteins? Because different types of proteins have different pH levels. What if we change the types of tomatoes? Because different tomatoes have different pH levels as well. And we iterated and we iterated for another 6 months, this time with the help of with other people that are more familiar with sauces. No one in the sauce space knows anything about proteins. And a lot of places have turned us down as we've approached, co-packers, manufacturers, commercial kitchens, things like that. And they're just like, yeah, what you're asking us to do is way outside the realm of what we are normally used to. And so that's been a challenge that we've sort of had to address as well. Is like, wait, you want me to make you a product that's not in and of itself naturally shelf stable? And they bring in their scientists and their different sort of chefs and their food people, and they just say, "Now this is just too much." Honestly, they're just saying it's just too risky for our equipment and for our processes. And so anyway, long story short, fast forward to today, we've added tryptophan as well as another important protein source. It's all naturally occurring, but we've really dialed in the taste, the texture, the flavor, the smell. So like even the last one, that you tried at the Kehi show, we've improved since then. And it's been like 2 steps forward, 1 step back every time, right? Where it's like, okay, we have a more complete protein that's so important to us. But then when you added that tryptophan, well, it's a step back because it doesn't actually mesh well with the types of acids that we were using. So then it's like, okay, well, let's go back. Let's look at some different acids. Let's find something that works a little better. And then it's like, okay, well, that's good. But what we found out is that acid that helps address some of the taste related to the tryptophan makes our onions taste like crap. And the onions are a really important part of a sauce. So then we had to change the onions. We had to find a different onion to mix better with it. And so it's like every time you make a change, and we feel like it's all for the better, but some versions of the sauce have been better than others. And we can always tell, most people rave about it, which we love. It's exciting to be a part of that, like what you did. But we did have 1 or 2 batches that went out into mass distribution where people have not loved it, right? Some people are okay and they like it, but it wasn't like, yeah, I want this again. And we start, I mean, you hear feedback immediately. Online people are pretty vocal about how they feel about products, and we watch really closely anytime we make even like a little tweak. When we start, okay, like let's like we know that maybe these are the stores or these are the online customers that have got it. Let's get their feedback. And if someone likes your product, they almost never say anything. But if someone dislikes your product, they're going to let you know, and then they're going to let their neighbors know, and then they're going to call your mom, and they're going to tell your mom that your product sucks. And so we saw that.
So often that is like the real case, right? Like, Daniel, you experienced something like that recently.
Oh yeah, yeah. So like,
someone liked your stuff, didn't know.
Yeah, and I like this whole concept of net promoter score, right? I'm sure you're familiar with this, right? It's like either the people really like it and then they go out and evangelize, or they just dislike it and then they evangelize. But the 80% in the middle that like your product just don't say anything, right?
Yeah.
And they're happy and they're content and they love it, but they don't say anything. So it's like on either extreme they're super vocal, but in the middle they don't say anything. But what Jimmy was referring to was, I missed a LinkedIn DM where someone was like, hey, I was meeting with an Italian dude here in East Nashville, asked him who had the best pizza in town, and he mentioned yours. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I missed that DM. It was like weeks and weeks ago because I do the entrepreneur thing and I don't always check my LinkedIn DMs. So,
LinkedIn, I mean, people, most people don't. But yeah, to your point, Rhett, like people don't normally let you know when it's good. They definitely let you know when it's bad.
Yeah.
So how did you guys go about, like, I guess, addressing the production issue? Because you mentioned like a lot of co-packers were not comfortable making it. Did you guys eventually find someone who was, and you're still
Yeah.
working with them?
Yeah, so we found two or three places that are comfortable working with us. Are the first place, and hats off to that team and that guy. And I won't mention anybody in particular, just out of respect to them. Really fantastic, a person to be willing to kind of stick his neck out, and work with us, but uh, not a lot of capacity to scale with us. And so then at one of the trade shows, I'm pretty sure it was Newtopia, we met a person who had worked in the protein space, in like a supplements lab or something like that, and then he had moved to be the sort of food production scientist, um, at a sauce company. And he said, "Hey, this like mixes these two areas that I love. Would love to work with you." And so I thought, "Oh, this is kind of the unicorn that we were looking for." And so we started just kind of kicking the tires with them a little bit, and he really did. He understood what we were doing. He understood sort of the complicated flavor profiles that you get with proteins. And so we said, okay, we want to start working with these guys. We got a baseline formula sort of put in place, and then he quit. The guy quit, went back into the supplement space, and so then we were stuck with um, that same issue that we had with everyone else, which was where they don't really understand proteins, they don't understand how they work, they don't appreciate the nuances or the difficulty. And a lot of, and this is something I didn't really appreciate, a lot of the process and procedure in these in larger production facilities, is that they have software that tells them what to do, right? They have software that tells them what percentage of ingredients need to go in, or what needs to be taken out, or what needs to be and they just follow that. They just follow that. And what we found working with this place and one other place was they rely so heavily on these software systems once they get sort of a base formulation punched in, that the things that we had learned over the course of now several years of getting it right was that there's on the protein there's like zero margin of error. You cannot mess up the protein, or it messes up all of the other things that we've been working on. It messes up the flavor profile, it messes up the taste, it messes up the texture. Sometimes the smell turns funky, and the software system wasn't built. Yeah, the software wasn't built to account for protein, and so yeah, that's just taken like some patience and some back and forth and some practice with these places. And yeah, I mean, we've had to throw away a lot more product than we ever wanted to. And when I say a lot of product, like we've thrown away probably a couple 100,000 gallons of sauce over the last years, because if it's if there's first off, if there's not enough protein, that's a huge problem, because label claims require us to have the amount of protein that we're telling people. And so we take our sauce from almost every batch and we send it to an independent lab to test our proteins to make sure that we have the minimum amount of protein that we're saying that we have. There have been times when the protein ratios haven't been as we set it out to be. And so maybe there's too much collagen or there's too much whey. And sometimes the product is good enough and we release it, and other times it's too bitter and we have to scrap it. And so we have a really good process now, and like this latest sort of batch that's out in the wild, at most retailers, some of them still have some of the older versions, but it's probably the most dialed in that we've ever had. And like I said, we've added tryptophan to get a more complete protein profile, and then we've changed the onions, and and it's like really where it needs to be. And now the important part is just repeatability and ensuring that every batch, every single time is exactly what it is. And I guess, Daniel, to go back to your specific question, I think it was your question. We are on site every single time, and we are tasting every single batch, and we're starting, and they start early, so we're there at like 5 in the morning sometimes, and we're sitting in the conference room, and we're, you know, yeah, that tastes pretty good. Hey, get the last version, and then get the one version before that, and we're gonna taste all three, and we're gonna see how they all compare, and we're gonna make sure that this is exactly where it needs to be. And I think that, and we have to travel to our co-manufacturer. We have to, jump on an airplane, and so sometimes that's really inconvenient. Almost every time we do a production run, they say we're gonna start this day, and then they don't start that day. They start the next day. So then we're sitting there like,
Twiddling your thumbs.
that sucks. But that's
Like,
part
thank
of
you
working.
for having me fly in.
Yeah, and then
Um,
we just sit in the hotel room. But that's like part of it, right? Like if you're going to work with a co-manufacturer, that's kind of the give and take of like, doing it that way.
I feel like you guys are really like going through it like in the correct way though. Because every time I've seen someone who like really like executes on like product, makes the marketing and sales and everything else so much easier, you kind of have to be a little obsessed.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys are a little obsessed.
We we're obsessed. We want it to do well, but also almost like besides just our personal obsession is we feel like we owe it to folks that if we're going to put a product out there and we're going to represent it as something, we really want it to be that. And we want it to taste good. We want it to have that experience. And we don't want to mislead people. We don't want to do that like, oh, it tastes so good. Maybe you get, a bunch of reviews, but then ultimately like it sucks and then people are disappointed. We don't want that. Like we want it to be a really great experience for people. So yeah.
Makes a
Anyway, I
ton of
cut you
sense,
off.
man.
I apologize. Keep going. I cut you off there.
Oh no, I mean like I'm fascinated by your guys' journey, especially the production stuff. I guess I should have expected that it would have been really, really hard. Um, so I mean, on top of that, you guys also had to launch a CPG brand, which in and of itself, even if you're launching something that is easy to make, is still incredibly hard. What were you guys' first steps when you first got started to say like, okay, we're gonna sell this thing? Like, where
Yeah.
did you go to sell it first?
Um, we we tested out the theory. Are people willing to spend a lot of money to buy this kind of unique product? We created a landing page. So we had figured out our base formula, our in-house formula. We created a landing page. We didn't do really any SEO. We didn't do anything. We said, what are people searching for? And we launched that page, which is something that I hobbled together like in an hour or something like that. I wish back then we had ChatGPT, right? That they create these pages and they flip them up, almost instantaneously. Fumbled through, and I think within like a 24 or a 48-hour period, we had, maybe 10 or 12 people or something had signed up. One lady emailed us directly and was like, "Hey, I am pumped up to try this product." It was like, okay, that's really promising. So then we started to build out a Shopify website. We had tried, with other businesses, we've tried other platforms. Shopify was an easier platform for us. So I'm not advocating anybody use Shopify or not. I'm just saying that like that was an easy thing for us to
I
go
don't know if
to.
I've met anyone recently who's not using Shopify.
It's just so easy. It's just so easy. And it so okay, so we started the Shopify site, and then we started to kind of build out the team. We brought on a marketing person or a marketing agency and a marketing person to kind of make it look more professional. We updated the branding on the jar, and then we did like an official online launch. Um, Again, almost zero. We did not want to artificially create product market fit. We wanted to see what people were willing to do. And so at the time, like I said, they were big jars. They were either 24 or 27 ounces. We were selling them for $20 a jar. And then we were making people pay for shipping. And then you had to buy two. So it was like $75 essentially to buy 2 jars of sauce and to ship. And our thinking was if people are willing to do that, then they're willing to buy the sauce, right? There's demand. And we were really pleasantly surprised. Over the course of a couple of months, we sold through our first production run entirely. We had one guy in Wisconsin who was buying like hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of sauce at a time. And he would email us and he was like, hey, don't stop making this. I love this. And we're engaging with him and it was like, hey, how did you find out about us? He's like, well, I was just searching. I was just Googling and yours was the only one that came up. Uh, and we said, well, why are you so obsessed with why do you love our sauce so much? And he's like, well, I think it tastes great, but also my girlfriend was a bodybuilder or is a bodybuilder, and she won't eat pasta because the macronutrients are all weird. But because of Sturdy Sauce, we can now have pasta again. It's sort of like this, I'm giving myself permission to
Right.
to try this food again that I more or less have cut out of my diet because you've just made it so easy to get the macronutrients just right. Um, and okay, so after a couple of months of doing that, we said, okay, there is product market fit. People are willing to pay a premium for like a unique sort of high quality protein product. And we started reaching out to our networks to see if we could find some folks to help us get into retail. Chad, my partner, he had experience in other industries, more B2B. Uh, and then, I've worked as an attorney for many years, but then before that, I did marketing. Got my MBA in marketing, so it's something that's always kind of been there for me. But again, almost all B2B. And so we needed someone to help us work the retail channels. So we got introduced to a couple different brokerages, started interviewing different places. We're really kind of skeptical about going down the brokerage route. We got burned in some of our other businesses. In that supplement one that I mentioned to you guys, the gummies, we were paying a firm. I almost want to say their name because they were so sucky. Just to
Feel
like
free to.
blow them up a little bit. It was a shop out of Utah, but we were paying I mean, there's like a million in Utah, so that doesn't, no way you can narrow it from there. But we paid them like $20,000 a month over the course of a year, and they
Good
sold
God.
and they sold one
What?
they sold one bottle of gummies. And they kept telling us, well, it's this, it's that, you got to do this. And everything they said, we were trying, like we were really embracing it. And it was a disaster. It was a disaster.
I'm gonna take this moment to just throw out there for anyone that listens, is thinking about starting a company. You probably should. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
That was weird. I had like a weird thing happen with my headphones. But anyways, you should probably think about the fact that most people and I had a founder tell me this like 2 weeks ago. Um, Ironically, he's working on a better for you candy. Really, really cool brand. He was only on the podcast before. But I was talking to him. We were just chatting about like what was going on with him, what was going on with me. And he was like, honestly, man, I think most of these people that like kind of surround the CPG brand industry as like service providers, whether it be like a marketing agency or a brokerage or branding house or an R&D house, you would think like they'd care about like us succeeding. He's like, no, they care about you paying them.
Mhm.
And then like they hope that they do a good enough job that you succeed. But with a lot of other things in like B2B, it's so opaque and like there's not a lot of accountability that like you can kind of get by being really bad at your job and charging an incredible amount of money for a really long time. It's not good.
I have this conversation frequently with folks. Chad and I talk about it all the time too when it comes to like working with different types of agencies or brokerages. And that is just what you said. They they want you to do well because that's great, but that's kind of like that's the byproduct of you paying them. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. They actually have no idea. But as long as you're paying them, they're going to continue to tell you what you want to hear or what
Yeah.
they think you need to hear so that you'll continue to pay them. It's really brutal and unfortunate. I think especially for like first time folks or maybe people that are less sophisticated or have never experienced something like this before, and there's a trust level that you have there. And I think it's great to trust, and I'm a very trusting person, but the if you're having gut instincts or feelings about hey, this is not going well, it's probably because it's not going well.
Dude, I'll
Yeah.
tell you a story about that. That's like across industry, but it's the truth no matter what you're working on. When Megan and I got started, we were 23, and we originally built a franchise system. It's something I'm building again today with No Baked, but we had all these shops that were doing really well. We had this firm come in that did franchise sales and development, and they told us like, okay, you guys are really young, you don't know what you're doing. Let us help you. And we're like, of course we
Yes.
need help. We don't know what we're doing. Terrible idea. Like some of the best advice I can give people now, especially with AI, is go figure it out yourself first. Do your own research. Start kind of executing on your plan, whatever it is. It's very similar to you guys like developing, tasting, trying your sauce. Even when like the experts, like the R&D guys at like the co-man are gonna do it, it's like you kind of have to control that process yourself. And the minute that you give control of it to someone else, you pay them and expect them to do a really good job, it's not going to work out. With that firm, we barely sold a franchise. We were paying them an enormous retainer. I think it was like 6 grand a month. And then on top of that, we had to pay them like 16 grand if they sold a franchise, which was insane. Um, they sold one, and they were supposed to sell five in the first year. And then they were like, "Well, you need to lower your franchise fee." And I was like, "So you can't sell them?" It was like the first time in my life that I was like, "Wait, I'm the I am the sucker. Like I'm the one that's paid you guys like almost $100,000 in retainer fees, and I have almost nothing to show for it. Um, this is strange, but like that happened with brokers once we got into retail. I say a lot of that stuff happened probably because I was young, but also because I was new at it. And I think with most new founders, like you said, Rhett, like people will go and they'll trust because it's like I've never been in retail before. I was like this, that, or the other in my day job. I never sold into like grocery stores. So like maybe these people know what they're doing. It turns out probably like 90% of them don't, and like 10% of them really do. And vetting for that is like almost impossible unless you get like a killer referral.
No, that's exactly right. And I actually think you just said something that's really key, and that is get a killer referral.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's how we ended up working with we say people in the industry would call them a brokerage. We call them a strategic sales partner. I mean, we interviewed and we tried a lot of folks, but at the end of the day, a person that I really trust, that is an advisor for our company, now he said, "Hey, I worked with this guy. I know him really well. He may not be a fit for you. I don't know, but I really trust him, and I know that he'll do a good job, and I know that he knows what he's doing." That I think in many ways, set up the next stage of success for Sturdy Sauce was to follow that recommendation because they really, I mean, this guy and his team, and as the team's been built out, they really know what they're doing, and they've done a fantastic job for us, and so we're grateful to have them. And again, I don't know if I should mention their name or not mention their name. I'm not sure what the policy
I
is, but
mean, depending on like, I'll put them in the show notes depending on how they feel about being advertised like this, because it's a glowing recommendation. So what was the first retail once you guys kind of like you started like figure your sea legs out, you found product market fit. What was the first retailer that you guys launched in?
yeah, I
What
mean
was that process like?
that was such a journey too, and I know that we're coming up on time here, but we worked for a year. So we engaged this strategic sales agency, and they started working with all their contacts, which are the buyers. They started contacting all the buyers. We started sending samples out, and the buyers were like, "This is so much money, right? Like 18 bucks, $20 for a jar of sauce next to a $2 jar of sauce." And it's like how you're going to blow people's minds. It's too expensive and it's too big. So we said, okay, well, we can kill two birds with one stone. We'll just make it smaller, which in and of itself shrinks the price. They helped us sort of work on packaging design a little bit. So we iterated the package a little bit. And then we just were just like hard at it, trying to convince people like, no, the protein thing, people want more protein. And it sounds crazy to say this now because everything has protein in it. But you go back like 3 or 4 years, and it was kind of a gym bro mentality of like, oh, only the gym bros want that. But where I'm like, no, I'm telling you, Moms with kids want this. Dads with kids want this. Dads want this. And there was a lot of hesitation and a lot of pushback saying no. And one guy in particular said, people do not want added protein. They don't. I'm telling you, I have been in this industry for 40 years. They do not want more protein. Right? And we're like, okay, well, maybe we'll come back and talk to you in a year or two. But you like fast forward 3, 4 years where we're at now, and everybody's putting protein in everything.
Yeah, you
So
guys really hit the trend on the head on accident, which is kind of cool.
yeah, and
Um,
like kind of like we hit the wave just right, which is fantastic, and we're there, but it didn't come out of us chasing a trend. It was something that was
yeah,
meaningful to us, kind of what we started with.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind
trends
of
are
I think how the
convergence.
best things started.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
Love that.
convergence of people like you and a lot of other people like you saying, "Hey, this is the future," and it converges into a trend. Like you guys were early, but there were a lot of other people thinking the same thing in CPG in the consumers' minds across the board, and that convergence, right? Of hey, we want better macro balance in our food, just kind of pushed it into a wave. But yeah, it's like it's organic. It starts from people like you, the consumers, asking for it, putting that convergence
Yeah, I
together.
mean, let's talk about your thoughts on the trend, Rhett. Like, you guys were in it beforehand because you were a concerned dad or a dad that was trying, like, which I understand now deeply. Like, trying to get them to eat like decent food is, it's kind of hard. Um, what are your thoughts now on like everybody just like shoving protein and everything?
Yeah, oh man, I get this question a lot too, and I'm of two minds. One is, um, it cheapens what we've done a little bit. It cheapens like the struggle that we went through to get a really round, like sort of full spectrum protein with all right. And I don't love that. And we've gotten a lot of hate, I think, from the internet. People are like, "Oh, you guys are crazy. You've added too much. You're chasing this trend," and whatever. You take it, and it's fine. But in my mind, I'm like, "No, we were pre-trend. Like, maybe we're part of the reason why the trend is what it is. Like, people saw what we were doing, and they said, hey, people like that." So that's kind of the negative. On the positive side, like I am a protein hound. I love protein. I will try just about anything with added protein. And because of all the advances in proteins and because of all the advances in manufacturing and people, like obviously the more people pay attention to it, the better it's going to get. And so if I'm making a choice, I will say I don't quite understand the protein soda. And I don't quite understand it. And I don't
Have
quite
you seen the
understand.
protein seltzer? Because I've
Yeah,
never tried it, but I've wanted to.
I
I
haven't
took a
tried it.
picture of it at
Yeah,
Costco.
I
I'm
actually
seeing all of it out there.
I was so curious about the protein soda. I pulled a watermelon flavored one off the shelf the other day. Um, I was shocked. I really thought it
Did
was
you
going
try?
to
Wait,
be.
did you like it?
So it's you have to remember what it is. It's a freaking protein soda, right?
Yeah,
So it kind of has a whey flavor to it, but it's not
it's
awful.
weird.
Like it's
Yeah, that's
okay.
how. Yeah, I felt that way too. Like it's okay. It's
Yeah.
essentially like carbonated light. Anyway, just like I guess if I don't drink a lot of soda, but if I do, I'm 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 more like anyway. I understand why they're doing it, right? Because like Poppy did the thing, and the drink
There's
space is what
definitely,
it
yeah,
is.
there's definitely probably a desire for an exit, I think, in the space.
Yeah.
The
So
desire for like, I want $2 billion. I get that. I think that you're kind of right though. You were about to say it, but like, yeah, if you're gonna drink a soda, like, don't you just want a soda? I don't drink them all the time, and I feel like you and Iret probably like have similar lifestyles. Like, I do triathlons. I live in Bozeman, Montana. I really like being outside. I like eating a lot of protein. I don't like eating things that aren't basically from the fresh part of the grocery store. And when I do eat packaged food, I'm like, yeah, like let's eat some packaged food, I guess. Or if like I want a cookie, like I eat a cookie. So I think there is a limit. I'm curious to see like what sticks around, but I do think at the end of the day, like Daniel said, it kind of matters what consumers think.
Yep.
Like what we think doesn't matter. It's similar to that buyer
yeah.
that told you like no, people don't want added protein. You're just like, dude, the
Doesn't matter what
people
you think.
have spoken. I can't stop them. They do want added protein. For us
Yeah.
to argue over the facts is kind of hard. Although it's kind of hard to know what the facts are because nobody like surveys every American every year and asks them like, what food do you want to eat
Yeah,
today or
yeah,
tomorrow?
we use kind of like big data to make those decisions for us and search terms and things like that. And I guess too, as I'm saying this out loud, I realize I never answered your question specifically. So we talked a little bit about the leading up to, but you asked me, well, who did we go into first?
Yeah,
We went into Rayleigh's in Northern
really.
California. So that's where my partner Chad lives. He lives up in Sacramento. And after a series of 2 years really courting Rayleigh's, a new buyer came in, a guy named John, who was just like, he is cutting edge too, like understanding trends and understanding like what the next generation wants and whatever. And he's like, no, I'm going to bring you on. I think your sauce tastes phenomenal. Let's do it. And so he brought us on, which was a really cool thing. Just as far as timing goes, he brought us on, and then shortly after that, Big Y, kind of back east, brought us on in a very limited capacity. But what that did was it opened up some distribution doors for us to be able to say, oh no, we're in this distribution house or we're in that distribution house. Um, but because we were able to say that, the next opportunity, which I think was like our kind of our biggest like push off opportunity, was to be a part of Sprouts on the innovation set. And we did really well. Yeah, we did really well on the innovation set. People really liked the product, and we just had like a really positive experience doing that. Even though people were saying that's scary, like if you fail at that, that's not a good thing for your brand, and they're gonna make you buy all your product back or whatever. And we said, well, they've given us the opportunity, we want to take it. And we executed really well there. Consumers, like, that's when we felt the biggest sort of boost of like product market fit. People are at the grocery store level willing to buy. And then that opportunity led to you know where we're at now, which is so we're in the mainline set now at Sprouts, but we're in Target nationwide and all of the Albertsons, Safeway stores nationwide. We're being activated this year, and I won't say anything. I'll keep that, but in some other like really big banner chains later this year. And yeah, it's just like once you get that momentum and once you have demonstrated your ability to sort of keep up and to support those activations, by helping to with I don't know, are you doing sales and promotions, and what's your promotional calendar look like, and are you, I mean, we need to do better in those areas. We recognize that, but also like there's only so much time in the day, and we continue to see demand from new activations. So, that's, but anyway, we're grateful for that. And by virtue of kind of going all in on the retail, we've had to pull back a little bit on what we've done online. We're still selling online, and that's great, but definitely the focus has been to support the retail channel more than the online channel at this point.
I feel like with a glass jar, that's probably smart.
Yeah.
We have
It's
we
just
we have had a lot of breakage over the years for
just my
sure.
assumption.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, DC is hard, man. It's hard. I think for anyone who has something that like is significant weight, or anything that could break, because
Yeah,
the
for
margins
cold
are really
chain.
thin. People go into it thinking like the margins are really like big. That can be true. Like contribution margin can be big, but if you go to scale, the cost of acquisition and then like the breakage, the returns, the shipping, like if you offer free shipping, all that stuff eats into it. Eventually, it's like most brands are operating on like a 5-6% net
Um,
situation.
we're doing better than that, but
I'm
I
sure you
will
are.
say that those issues that you mentioned in direct to consumer, they have equivalent issues in retail, right? You
Yes,
just
they
have to
do.
kind of pick like which hard you want to do. And for
You
us,
do have to pick what hard you want to do because there. And I find it really fascinating that it's like at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to like where can you operate really well, not like you said, like which hard you want to do. Like you'll have a set of challenges and you could solve those, and if you could solve those super well, then like that channel will be extremely profitable for you, your brand, whatever that looks like. But yeah, I mean, you just got to figure that out. I've had other people on this podcast who are like Amazon is the greatest thing on earth, and usually when I talk to people about Amazon, they're like, well, it's a loss leader, or they're like, oh, it's a good acquisition channel, but like they don't make money. And then we've had people like Jason from New Primal on, and Jason makes lots of money, more than most of us on just Amazon. Um, which is fascinating though, because it's like, hey, here's someone who has taken a lot of time. He's taken a lot of time over the last 5 years to really like learn the channel with his team and understand like how to make it work. And yeah, I guess it is just kind of picking your own heart. You're gonna pick the challenge that you do, and then you're gonna do that challenge really well. So what's next for you guys? What are you guys focused on now? Now that you have momentum,
Yeah.
you gonna quit your job, Rhett?
Uh,
you gonna go all
we
in?
probably not. Probably not. Um, I have a lot of kids, right? I got colleges to support
I
and
understand that.
and whatnot. But okay, so what's
How many
next?
kids do you have,
We're
Rhett?
gonna.
Just real quick.
I have 7 kids.
Okay, I'm the oldest of
Holy
13, which is
moly,
why I
dude! I
asked.
thought you were gonna say
Yeah,
five. You
yeah, you
got
go. So
7 kids.
I have five daughters and then 2 boys at the end. I have 4 teenage girls right now, which is like way harder than having a CPG company. Oh, it's way harder than being a lawyer.
Oh, for sure, for
So,
sure.
but yeah, so I have a lot of kids, so I'm keeping all the jobs. I'm keeping all the jobs.
As many as you can.
Yeah, fill in the proverbial bathtub. So we're going to continue to grow. Like I said, we have some really exciting activations happening this year, and we're going to I think refocus some efforts on supporting those activations. Like, oh, another one, and now that there is enough. I mean, maybe the retailers won't love this, but the fact that we're in so many different retailers means that there are synergies just by virtue of being seen in one is helpful in the other, and we have nationwide distribution, and so any sort of advertisement that maybe before, if you throw it out, it goes to the wrong place. The risk of that is decreasing as our activations and distribution increase. And so we're able to be, I think, more thoughtful and more strategic about some of the spend that is required to support that. I suspect this year we may raise some capital to support that, and I think and that'll be a big decision for us as a company on if we decide to do that, and if so, how we want to do it. And
Have you
then
guys raised money at all? Did you
uh,
raise money? You mentioned you raised money in the beginning of the other companies.
so we didn't raise money in the beginning of this one. We bootstrapped in the beginning, and then we self-funded through I think our essentially our launch into Sprouts, and then we have raised a little bit of friends and family money through a safe note, but pretty minimal. We haven't really raised much, and so this raise that we're considering for 2026 is going to be it would be probably a seed series or a Series A. And again, like we're not entirely committed to doing that, but I think if we want to have the growth that we want and support in a way that we think is that will really like be respectful to our retail partners, we probably do need to raise some capital. So there's that piece of it, and yeah, the other side of it is we have some really cool other products that we've already developed. We're just sitting on those, waiting for the right moment to launch, and maybe that's 2026. Maybe it's 2027. We don't know for sure. We're going to let the market tell us, but we do have other things that we've been working on that are, I think, just as innovative and just as exciting. Yeah,
Well, I'm really excited about that because
Yeah.
I love your guys' sauce.
appreciate
Honestly,
it.
I had no idea that it was in Albertsons and Safeway, and now I'm gonna have to buy it. Um,
Please do.
I will be there buying it all the time. Very few products that I really, really become obsessed with. Usually they're protein based. Um, like I became obsessed recently with this bone broth powder that's in Costco.
I use it.
Um,
I know what you're talking about. I'm a
yeah,
big
it's
fan
called
as well.
I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, I'm gonna have them on the podcast soon, everybody. I reached out to that founder on LinkedIn. I was like, dude, I don't know who you are. You don't know me. I really like your bone broth, like a lot. Um, anyways, that's really cool, man. I'm excited to see you guys grow. Uh, it's one of those things where it's been interesting to watch you guys because you both kind of like you have like dipped your toe in slowly. You still are doing your day job. You kind of let it like grow organically. How do you look, I guess as last question before you go, how do you guys like handle that? How do you handle having like multiple things going on at the same time? Really just like I guess to inform the audience like you can keep your job and like do this.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know that I would. Oh, that's like a whole nother podcast right there. But I'll
I'm sure
say
it
that
is.
I'll say that I'm not always good at giving my family the time they deserve, and that's a struggle I've had my whole career, way before Sturdy Sauce, and I regret that, especially with my older kids, maybe not being there for them when they were younger. So I mean, it's real, like that
Yep.
regret that
Yeah,
people feel, and that's mostly just the demands of being a lawyer, demands of any high stress, like time consuming profession, where as much time as you want to give, it will take.
for
And
sure.
so, right? I mean that, and so, but when I'm with my family, I like to be with my family, and when I'm being a lawyer, I owe it to my clients to be a lawyer, to be with them. And then when
Yeah,
I'm doing Sturdy Sauce stuff, I do Sturdy Sauce, and I just like focus on that. It doesn't always work out that way, and sometimes things happen where it gets messy. Uh, but uh, but like a day for me is typically like in the morning, I'm with my kids, um, and then I go do lawyer stuff, or on my way to doing lawyer stuff, as I'm driving to the office, I'll talk with Chad. We'll talk with our different partners in different places, and then I'm lawyering, and then in the evenings I'm with my kids, and then when they go to bed, I'm doing Sturdy Sauce stuff until whenever. Chad and I have different strengths and weaknesses, and we rely on each other. And then we've built out a team with in-house people, or with with people that we've hired that are experts in their space, and we just like really rely on them to do what we hired them to do. And but we do ensure that there are levels of accountability. That's really important. Where we talked about earlier about trusting, right? Hire people that you trust, but no one's gonna no one is going to be as invested in your company as you are ever. And if you tell yourself that, you're gonna be sadly disappointed when they let you down, right? And so you do have to continue to maintain a level of ownership, even if that's just checking in, reporting back. So yeah, I mean, that's like a really long-winded way of answering your question, but it is sort of all of those different things.
I feel like it has to be a long-winded answer just because it's a complicated question. I appreciate the answer. I do a bunch of different stuff myself, and I've found that like compartmentalizing it, like you were kind of describing earlier, where you're like, when I'm doing the thing, I'm trying to stay locked in on the thing, allows you to get a lot more done than you'd think. I think a lot of people have like a full-time job and they give it like in reality like part-time effort without noticing. And so it's like
Yeah.
if you want to do two things, like you can kind of just continue to do the same level of effort. You're just gonna have to squish the time band, which is possible. Just a
I I,
little, it
I want to
causes you to be locked in.
I want to say something about
Yeah,
that. Like, I'm not a big social media person, but I do see things like, oh, what's my 5 to 9 before my 9 to 5 from my and they have all these
yeah,
cute little phrases. It drives me nuts. That
it
absolutely
does.
drives me nuts. I just
Yep.
cannot. I think maybe it's our generation or like the next generation. They have to like give names and titles to things, but really, what it is this: if something is important to me, what sacrifices am I willing to make that important thing successful? And that is health and fitness, that's family, that's belief, right? A belief in religion or a God, that's professionally, what are the trade-offs?
Yeah,
And for me, like what's my trade-off? And there's always a trade-off. And am I willing to do the thing? If you want a 9 to 5 job, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur because it's not a 9 to 5 thing. You also shouldn't be a lawyer, and you shouldn't be a lot of other things if you want a 9 to 5 job. But if you want something that you can contribute to, that you see sort of the fruits of those labors, you just got to know it's not going to fit within that 9 to 5 realm. And again, like, you don't have to want that for yourself. But if you do, understand and get educated on, and I honestly like listen to like these sorts of shows and podcasts, like get as educated as you can so you can understand what it is that the current that you're diving into, when you head down that path.
Yeah, you do kind of have to be okay with this idea of being like on 24/7, but there is a balance, right? Like the balance is just self-mandated.
Yeah.
Like I physically have to force myself to take time off. Um, Usually by like disconnecting from my phone or like any source of communication. Yesterday I went snowboarding by myself, which was great. Anyone wanted to give a father or mother, like a parent, some time like away on their birthday, like a gift, give them the gift of not doing anything, like far away from everybody. I just went to snowboard by myself for like 4 hours. I was like, this will be great. But in order to like turn off, I had to like leave my phone in the car.
Yeah, you just got to get away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had to do that. If I don't do that, then even yes, on my birthday, it's a Monday, people will text and call and email me, and I will check my email without noticing that I'm doing it. It's my tick. Instead of Instagram, I open my email. It's really weird. And then I open Instagram because that's where I find all of those maps to post on LinkedIn to make people angry. It's my favorite pastime. I find maps and like data posts, and I'm like, oh, I'll post this. It's so much fun. Cool. Well, I think we went a little over on time, but Rhett, I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Rhett.
Let everyone know, I guess, where to find Sturdy Sauce, and then we've already talked about it a bunch, but where to follow you guys, where to buy it in the store, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, perfect. So online, you can find us at sturdysauce.com or at sturdysauce on whatever preferred social media site you like. In stores, we're in Albertson Safeway, their banner of stores across the U.S. We're in Target across the U.S. We're in Sprouts. Fresh Time, Big Y, Tony's Fresh Market. I know I'm forgetting some places, and so I feel bad.
Go online and look at the map,
The
everybody.
website.
But yeah,
Yep.
if you go online, you'll see where we're at there. And for anybody that does listen to this and tries this out, two or three things I want to say. One is, if you have questions, I'm totally happy to answer questions. I don't know if I can be helpful, but I'm willing to help anybody. I think the more we help, the better the ecosystem becomes as a whole. I love what you guys are doing for that reason. It's very helpful. But that also is, if you have legal questions, I can also help there too, which I think is kind of a unique offering that I just want to help. And then the other thing is we appreciate your support. It's meaningful, and I hope that I haven't come across as like an egomaniac or a jerk or anything like that. Like, it's very humbling to have people that like our sauce. Like, you're saying you love it. That's like really, really, that's special to me. That's humbling to me to hear you say that. And so thank you. Really appreciate it.
It'd be hard for you to come across as a jerk, Rhett. Everybody go buy their sauce. It is actually really good. I promise. And you know that I wouldn't say it was good if it was bad. I won't shout out the brands that are bad, but I try a lot of them, and they're not great. Typically things that are meant to be a dessert that are no longer a dessert, and it kind of ruins the idea of the dessert. Instead, you should eat some carrots, something that's good for you, which I do a lot. All right, guys, this has been an awesome episode. Follow us here on Spotify or wherever else. See y'all later.
See ya.
All right.